Hi everybody. I've been giving a great deal of thought about what Mahela had been talking about in one of the comments on, I think it was my last video, where she said she thought it would be important for me to talk about what some of the symptoms and signs were, because people really need to know to pay attention to their bodies. And she's right. Prevention is a wonderful thing, or catching it early is of paramount importance. In my case, I did all the right, well, let me start from the beginning. What happened was I knew they were, no, I want to start even before that. Let me start with my father. A lot of roads lead back to my very wise father. He had heart problems from as far back as I could remember, and my mother was always being supportive of him and shushing us around the house because she didn't want anything to upset him. I remember visiting my father in the hospital at one point after one of his heart attacks, and I remember he said to me, "Nobody knows your body better than you do." That's probably the most important thing, or one of the most important things anybody has ever said to me in my life, and I want you to pay attention to it now, because you know your body. I knew something was wrong with my body. I had no idea what it was. It started in a very strange way for me. For years, I had been having some not lower abdominal, really in the area of my ovaries. I had been having some soreness. Every now and then it would act up. Hormonally it would act up. And I had gone to the gynecologist and everything was checked out. I did have fibroids, and I did have one rather large fibroid that they were watching, but you know, he had told me that we could take it out, or if it didn't bother me, to leave it, and my feeling was, if I don't have to do it, I'm not doing it. So we left it alone, but I bring that up because it'll come up again later. So what happened was, a couple of years ago now, I'm thinking, at least a year and a half ago, a few things happened. One of the earliest symptoms I remember feeling was, well, it started earlier than that though. I used to have these feelings of discomfort sometimes in my right hip area. Just if I stood for a long time, or every now and then, it just felt a little on the sore side. Nothing that was anything other than that. Then at one point, my leg swelled up, my right leg, and it swelled up a lot. Now, I had a problem with swelling occasionally when my salt level was too high, or I was having a problem with my blood pressure. This didn't seem to be related to it because it didn't seem to make a difference. When I went to my cardiologist and I told him I was concerned about it, he said to me that it didn't look like anything to be too worried about, so he said he would not be concerned about it at that point. It felt slightly red sometimes, and when you pressed on it, you could see the depression. It was swollen, but it was not swollen where before that, whenever I had a swollen lower leg, always the lower leg, it would swell, and then if I took my blood pressure medication, or if I had less salt, or if I drank a lot of water, it would come down. This was not coming down. It was not coming down at all. People in my office said to me at the time, "Go to the emergency clinic, there's something wrong with you." And I said, "Don't be silly, I'm fine." That was my mistake. If there's something that's not typical for you, check it out. I would never not check it out again, now that I know better. But I didn't. So Actually, one day I was on my way to the emergency clinic because they scared the hell out of me. And I had put a call into my cardiologist's office, and his PA called me back. I adore her. She's extremely knowledgeable. She knows me for years. And I said, I'm on my way to the clinic because the people in my office seem to think that I could have something seriously wrong. I think they were thinking about, perhaps some venous issue. So, what is it, a DVT, perhaps? So she said to me, I really don't think that's what's going on here, and it would not be affecting you the way it is. You would have different symptoms. And so I never went into the emergency clinic. Not that I know what would have happened at that point anyway. Then sometime around that time, it was interesting because my cardiologist had wanted to do, I was overdue for my stress test. And they kept wanting to schedule an appointment. And I said I couldn't go right then because my leg was bothering me. And I knew I couldn't do the treadmill. And I certainly didn't want to do the stress with where they inject you because I really wanted to do it the normal way. And I assumed whatever was wrong with me would pass. So I said no. They called me a few times to schedule it. And I said, no, it's not feeling better yet. So I didn't do anything. My nose is itching. Does that mean a fight or I'm coming into money? Could we call it money? In any case, oh Lord, this is really funny. Sometime around the same time, I started to get this really strange symptom, but it kind of made me want to laugh in a way. When I would be lying in bed in a certain way, I would get this feeling as if somebody was peeing on my leg. Something in my right thigh all the way up, it felt like some kind of liquid. And I realize now that it must have been some chemical or something in my body that was traveling down the nerve paths or however they travel. No, it wouldn't have gone down that way, but I could feel it, and it was a very strange feeling, and I thought, okay, there is something going on here. Still didn't do anything because it was vague. I didn't even know who to go to or what to do. At the time, I was looking for an internist. I hadn't had one for a while. I had other good doctors, but I couldn't find an internist that I was comfortable with. So I wound up, it was, I believe, early September, but it was September, where I thought I saw the tiniest little bulge right at my groin. You could only see it if I was laying in a particular position. It was tiny. And if I didn't lay in that position, I almost thought I was imagining it. But a week later, I decided to try my friend's doctor, and I went to him and had him look at it. She had told me he had saved her husband's life and that he was wonderful. So I went to him, he examined my leg, and he told me it was nothing to worry about. He said it's a bad location you have it in, but he said that's lipoma, and they're fatty tissue tumors that are always benign, and it's nothing to worry about. If it gets problematic, we can have it taken out. So I left feeling comforted that there was nothing really wrong. However, there was another symptom at that point, and the other symptom at that point was that I had, for quite a while, I could not lift my right leg normally. You know the way if you put on a pair of pants, I'm lefty, so I put my left foot in first. When I went to put my right foot in, I couldn't lift my foot the way I normally did to put it in the pant leg. I would have to accommodate it by dropping the pant leg to the floor and lifting the leg as far as I could, but it wasn't far. And I thought that was really strange. And I said, this aging is not fun. When the thing started to grow, I noticed by November that it had grown. It was still not huge, but it definitely had grown. And I kept showing it to my friend Jackie. I saw her twice a week. And I said, does this thing look any bigger? And she kept telling me, no, it looked smaller. And that's another thing I want to caution you about. Well-meaning friends and relatives, especially if they have their own fears about mortality or about anything going wrong with you, because that suggests that they too are subject to things going wrong. Your friends, your relatives are not doctors. I remember a superb allergist many, many years ago when I was getting advice from everybody. He said, yeah, right. He said, everybody's a doctor, but find yourself a good plumber. And what he was saying is you can't listen to everybody thinks they're a doctor, or everybody thinks they can diagnose it based upon something that they heard or knew about that can be totally unrelated to what's going on with you. So you need to really take charge of your body, yourself, and your future. Part of my issue was the fact that I had been essentially pretty healthy most of my life. I had some issues. I had a stent put in 2007, and I had a couple of other issues, but it was nothing major. And the interesting thing for me, and this is very interesting to me, every 11 years, something major would happen in my life, medically. Weird. Where it got to the point where I was realizing it was every 11 years, and as I'd get closer to the 11th year, I'd start to worry. And sure enough, so in 2007, when this thing happened, I had a bad patch with it. I really did. I really could have died because there was a 90% blockage, as it turned out. And fortunately, they found it on the last day that I was in the hospital. I was in the hospital for 8 days while they were trying to investigate what was wrong with me. My blood pressure was through the roof. I was just not in good shape, and they didn't know why. So they finally found out that's what it was. They did the angioplasty and put in the stent. Unfortunately, because one of the drugs I had to take after the stent was Plavix, after weeks on Plavix, it made me sicker and sicker and sicker to the point where I could no longer function. And it got me into a bit of trouble financially because I was really essentially not working much for 6 months. And when I did work, the market had tanked, so it was a double whammy. But okay, let me come back to this. So now, interestingly, here it is, 11 years later. It started in 2017, so it was 10 years, but it became a crisis in 2018. So when the thing had started to grow, I went back to the doctor's office, got another appointment, and he could see that it was bigger. And when he asked me to raise my right leg when he was testing me, I could hardly raise it. And he said to me, "Why can't you raise your leg?" I said, "I don't know, but I can't." So again, he felt all around. He said, "It's soft, it's malleable." He said, it's just, you have it in such a bad spot. He said, "We can take it out if it's bothering you. I'll call an orthopedic surgeon and have you go talk to him." So at that point, I said, "Well, I can't go for surgery now because I need to do stuff at work. I would have to have time to prepare for that." And because he told me that it was nothing that needed attention, it was only because it bothered me, I let it go. And what I said to him at that point was, I went into his office and I said, "So are you telling me I have nothing to worry about?" He said, "Let me put it to you this way." He said, "I have a lot of holiday shopping to do yet. There's a lot I need to get done." He said, "And I won't be worried about you. You're going to be fine." I said, "That makes me feel so much better. Thank you." Well, unfortunately, it didn't work that way. And early in January, I called his office to make an appointment Might have been the middle of January. I called to make an appointment. It was by now bigger. And when I called to make an appointment, I couldn't get an appointment for 3 weeks. Coincidentally, he was on vacation. And when he was coming back, they said the office was going to be closed because they were switching computer systems and they were remodeling the office. So I couldn't get in for 3 weeks. When I went in at that point, he said to me, okay, he said, you really need to have an MRI with this. And he said, how come the MRI wasn't done? He had mentioned an MRI in November. And I, at the time, what he had said to me was, he gave me other tests to do and I did them. But with the MRI, he said, give me a day or two, I need to get authorization for it. He said, and we'll get back to you. They never got back to me. And of course, because he told me there was nothing to worry about, I was not worried about it. So when I finally got to see him in February after the 3 weeks was up, he ordered the MRI. And that's when I went in and had my MRI. And that's when I got the news that I had this dreaded word, a sarcoma, a soft tissue sarcoma. It was the scariest thing I had heard in my entire life. And I've heard some scary things, but this was scary. So what I'm trying to tell you, and what, it's like parents say to their children, don't do what I did, learn from what I did. I pray that you will learn from what I did. I pray that not a single one of you will have to go through what I've gone through and face the road that I'm facing with what turns out to be this huge sarcoma. The one thing that gives me a great deal of hope with this was that originally they had said it looked like it was self-contained. I'm praying that that's still the case and that it had not moved. And this particular kind of sarcoma, she told me it goes to the lungs, and my lungs were clear. So I'm having another CAT scan next week, and hopefully I'll have the same result. What she had told me at the time was sometimes there is a secondary tumor that does not grow because the chemicals the body gives off from the main tumor in order to feed itself and not have competition. I gather, I could be saying it wrong, that it does not allow any other tumors to proliferate. I'm going to believe, and I do believe, that that's the only place it is. And what gives me hope is that there was a young man, I saw it on YouTube, who had a huge sarcoma. And they were very worried about it. And they wound up doing surgery. And he was fine afterwards. I pray to God that I have the same outcome. I really do. I have high hopes for my future. Does that mean that I never worry? Hell no. I'm human. Of course I worry. It's a scary thing, and Lord knows we don't have all the answers. I got plenty of tips because I tend to be an intuitive, and I was getting messages for months. Whenever I see messages for other people and there's a problem that they need to take care of, it shows up as black clouds moving around past my vision. And I kept seeing it when I was alone, and I knew it was for me. And I didn't want to see it, so I would just ignore it and make it go away. But it showed up for months. For months, I was getting that message. What it's an indication of, anytime I've ever told somebody else, is that there's turmoil coming up in your life. There is some significant turmoil, and because there was so much of this, and what I see on the left side tends to be from the past, and what I see on the right side is going into the future, and it was going toward the right, and it meant that there was a great deal of turmoil coming up for me. I ignored it. I'm telling you, don't ignore your body. Don't ignore things that you know are not right. Don't be me. Be better than me. Learn from me. As a parent would for a child, what I want for every one of you is I want your road to be better than mine. I want your road to be easier than mine. And I pray to God that I can make some difference helping you to get there if you were ignoring it like I was. So on that note, that's all I'm going to tell you about this for this moment. I'm sure I will share other things as we move along this road to the next step. On that note, have a wonderful day. I have an appointment today in about an hour and a half with my cardiologist to get clearance for the surgery. Walking is very difficult at this moment in time because that bloody thing looks bigger to me, no matter what the radiation oncologist said. But then again, it is burnt to a crisp. The skin is peeling a lot, and I feel like I have a 3rd-degree burn that I'm dealing with. I'm doing the best I can. I really am doing the best I can, and I'm trying to tell myself it's finite. He said it would get worse for 2 weeks and then it'll start to get better. Well, I'm well into the 2 weeks at this point because my last treatment was last Friday. So it will be a week on Friday. Today is Wednesday. 2 more days, it'll be the first week. Then I have another week to go, or a little bit more. And then I should hopefully start to see it a little bit better. Of course, by the time any noticeable difference is there for it being better, in quotes, I'll be having my surgery, in which case all bets are off for how I'm going to be feeling for a while. But I'm going to do everything in my power to keep myself as healthy as possible. I'm trying to eat whenever I can. I'm really usually good if I buy something outside for one decent meal a day and I fill in for the other stuff. And it is what it is. So I'm hanging in there. You hang in there. I love you all, and I hope you have a great, blessed day. Bye-bye.